Hey my quilty friends, in today's video I'm going to show you how to make the 4X quilt block. Now it's block number 9 of our mystery block of the month series, and if you'd like to know more about that and join us, I'll put a link down below so you can check it out. But for now, let's make our 4X quilt block. You can find a copy of these cutting instructions over on my website. I'll put a link in the description below. So on the wrong side of both of our A pieces that measure 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches, we're going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. So I'll just take my ruler, take a washable marker and draw my lines. Then I'm going to take my B piece and place an A piece on top, so we've got the pieces right sides facing each other. I'm going to line up all 4 edges, and when I'm happy that's in place, I'm just going to pop a couple of pins in just to keep it in place, and then what we're going to do is sew along either side of that line with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm using my 1/4 inch foot so I can get my 1/4 inch seam allowance next to my line that I drew. I'm stitching at stitch length 2 and I'm using wonderful confetti thread. I'm just going to start on the very edge and sew right down to the bottom edge. Coming right off the very edge and then coming back to the top, and now I'll sew down this other side of my line. You can either turn it around, or if your foot has a 1/4 inch on both sides, you could just sew down the other side. Whatever works best for you. I'll remove my pins, and at this point you might like to give it a quick press, and now we're going to cut our piece in half. So now I'm just going to take my ruler, place it right next to the line that I drew and cut along my line. Now we have 2 pieces. Let's press. So now we're going to set our stitches, which sets our stitches into our fabric, making them stronger, and it helps our block lay flatter. Then I'm going to open it up and finger press it so the seams are facing towards our B fabric. And finger press, we don't want any creases in here, and then pressing. And then I'll repeat that for our second piece. So now on one of the half square triangles with the wrong side facing me, I'm going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner, cutting through the 2 pieces. So for example, we wouldn't be going this way because that's where our seam is. So just taking my ruler, finding the top corner and the bottom corner, making sure it's all lined up, and then drawing my line. So we've drawn our line. Then I'm going to take my second half square triangle and place them on top of each other, right sides facing each other, but making sure that the 2 fabrics are facing each other in opposite directions. So for example, my A fabric is here. I'm going to put my B fabric on top, and on this side we've got the B fabric at the bottom and the A fabric at the top. Then we're going to just make sure our edges are lined up nicely. And then what we're going to do is along the center here, we've basically got one big seam that needs to be nested. And that just means I've got seams here that are pressed and coming over this way. And on this side, they're pressed and coming over this way. We're going to butt them up against each other, and then they'll sit really nicely. So you can feel that when they're sitting really nicely. And what we can do is get them where we think they are sitting nicely, open it up and just take a sneak peek. And can you see how when I open that up it looks like it's one continuous line? That's exactly what we want. So when I'm happy with it, also checking these edges, I am just going to pop a pin in there. I can just quickly check again. Looks like it might have moved a little. Can be a little bit fiddly, but you will get there in the end. So just checking that looks much better. Checking it on this side, and then I'm just going to pop a pin over on this side, and I will check that it's still lined up all the way over here and on this side as well, and that's looking really good. And then what we're going to do is just sew along both sides just like we did previously. So just starting on that very edge again and sewing along. One thing to take note of is when I'm coming up to this seam, I want to make sure that I'm sewing it down in the direction it was pressed. So just keeping an eye on that, I'll remove any pins as they get in the way. And now I'll just sew along that second side. If you'd like to, you can press again just so it's sitting really nicely, and then we'll cut. Once again, just lining up my ruler on that drawn line or just right next to it and then cutting along the drawn line. Again, we've got 2 pieces and now let's press. Setting our stitches and then just opening it up and finger pressing, making sure there's no creases in there and pressing. Doesn't matter which way we set our seams. Repeating that for our second piece. So now we're just going to repeat those exact steps for our second set of A and D fabrics. So I'll just do everything exactly the same, creating my second set of quarter square triangles. If you're enjoying this video, please do subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss out on another video. It really helps me out and I appreciate it so much. Now we have 4 quarter square triangles. We need to square them up so they measure 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches, and I've got a ruler that is 4.5 inches squared. So all I do is place my diagonal line on top of the seam there, and then I have a center point and I also line that up, and then I just need to trim all 4 sides. If you don't have a 4.5 inch squared ruler, what you need to do is get your diagonal line on your ruler, place it on top of your seam, and then measure 2.25 inches from the center. Then you trim one side, and then do the same on all 4 sides. But because I do have this ruler and it is so much easier, I'm just going to use it today. And I've also got my rotating mat, which also helps. But you don't need a rotating mat. They're a nice to have, not a must have. You could just use a regular mat and just turn that as you cut. And then repeat that for all 4 quarter square triangles. So now taking our A and our B pieces that measure 7.5 inches squared, I'm just going to place them right sides together and then line up all 4 edges. And then when I'm happy, I'm just going to pop some pins in. Now what we're going to do is sew around the entire edge. So when we're doing that, I like to pop my pins in like this so that they're not going to get in the way. Now let's sew. So starting on one edge and sewing all the way down to the bottom edge. Then I come right off that edge. Then I'm just going to bring my foot up and then sew down this next edge. I'm not going to cut my thread or anything. I'm just going to start on the very edge and then carry on down this side and repeat that until I've sewn down all 4 sides. Removing the pins, and again if you'd like to you can press, it's completely optional. So now what we're going to do is take our ruler and cut a diagonal line on both sides of our square, and we're just going to place our ruler right where those stitches intersect at the top and the bottom. And then when I'm happy I'll cut. And then without moving the pieces, I'll just turn that round and do it on the other side. If you don't have a rotating mat, you could just turn your mat. Oh, and now we have 4 pieces. Now we're going to press. So once again, setting our stitches, and then we're going to press towards our B fabric. So opening it up, finger pressing and pressing towards the B fabric. And I'll repeat that for all 4 pieces. Now let's square up all 4 half square triangles again at 4.5 inches squared. I'm going to take my ruler, and this time I just need to make sure my diagonal line is on the seam and that it's fitting within my half square triangle. And if you don't have a 4.5 inch squared ruler, all you would do is just cut one side and then measure 4.5 inches on the other side, and then do the same on the other 2 sides. And if you're interested in checking out a ruler or a rotating mat or any other supplies that you might need, I'll put a link down below for Missouri Star Quilt Company where you can get a discount if you use my link. So now, following our image above, we're just going to place all our pieces so they're in the correct position. Okay, so do just double check that they are in the right position. I nearly got these 2 side ones around the wrong way. But once we're happy, what we're going to do is we're going to sew each of our rows together. So I'll just move these ones down a little bit, take my pins, and then I'm going to take the first and the second piece, place them right sides together, line up these edges, and then when I'm happy, I'll pop a couple of pins in. And then we'll sew along this edge, then we'll open it up and sew on the second piece, and we'll repeat that until we've sewn all our rows together. All the settings are the same, just sewing along that edge, making sure my seams are being sewn down in the direction they were pressed. Taking my second piece, making sure it is facing the right way, lining up the edges, pinning and sewing. Now we need to press our seams, and so we can nest them, we need the top and the bottom to go to my right and the middle one to go to my left. So I'll just set my stitches and do that. So basically we just need them to be in alternating directions. So just checking that our rows are in the correct position, we're going to sew row 1 and 2 together, and then we'll attach row 3. So I'll just pop row 3 out of the way. What we're going to do is just fold these 2 rows right sides together. Find our nested seams, so that's where we have seams meeting up. Remembering we've got one folded over coming one way, one folded over coming another way. We're going to butt them up together, and then I like to open it up and check I'm getting a nice straight line. When I'm happy, I'm also going to make sure these edges are lined up nicely. And then when I'm happy, I will just pop a pin in. And then I'll find my second set of nested seams and do exactly the same. Then I just like to pop a pin in at the beginning and the end. And if you'd like to, you could pop one in the centers here. I'm not going to worry about that today. Now let's sew. Okay, let's give that a press. So just setting our stitches one last time. And then we're going to press those seams, so you could press them however you like. I'm just going to press mine open. can be a little bit fiddly. Well, just making sure that all the seams are staying pressed in the direction they were originally pressed. Fixing that up, then I'll just flip it over and give it a press at the top. And there we have our 4X quilt block. Isn't that lovely? So I hope you enjoyed the 4X quilt block. Leave a comment and let me know how you're tracking with our mystery block of the month. And if you're looking for a different block to make, I'll put a link up above for last month's block, which was the Virginia Reel block. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.